In a move that reignited tensions between the United States and the European Union, Brussels recently imposed a 2.95 billion euro fine, about $3.5 billion, on Google for allegedly engaging in anti-competitive practices within its advertising technology business. What might appear to be a routine regulatory action quickly escalated into a potential trade confrontation. According to U.S. officials, the situation intensified with the threat of a Section 301 investigation, a trade enforcement mechanism under U.S. law that has historically been used in major disputes, including the U.S.-China trade war. The measure signaled Washington's growing frustration, effectively warning Europe that continued financial targeting of American tech companies could lead to retaliatory tariffs on European exports such as automobiles, wine, and cheese. The EU's latest actions form part of a broader pattern of penalties levied against U.S. technology giants. Over the past decade, Google has faced more than 11 billion euros in fines. Meta received a record 1.2 billion euro penalty. Under Europe's data protection laws, Apple was fined $2 billion for antitrust violations related to music streaming services, and Amazon was hit with a 746 million euro GDPR fine. A report by the Information Technology and Innovation Foundation found that in 2024 alone, penalties against American tech firms generated roughly $6.7 billion in revenue for the European Union, about one-fifth of all tariff income collected that year. Analysts suggest this marks a shift from regulatory enforcement to a sustainable revenue model, with European authorities increasingly relying on fines as a consistent financial resource. The official justification for these penalties is antitrust enforcement, a legal framework originally intended to prevent monopolies from dominating markets. However, critics argue that Europe is applying 20th century industrial logic to the modern digital economy. In practice, companies are being penalized not for illegal conduct, such as collusion or fraud, but for market success, for creating services and ecosystems so effective that consumers overwhelmingly choose them. This reinterpretation of antitrust law has led some observers to label it a tax on success. Instead of promoting competition through innovation, Europe is seen as constraining it by penalizing dominance regardless of how that dominance was achieved. Europe's other major regulatory instrument, the General Data Protection Regulation, GDPR, has also come under scrutiny. While designed to safeguard personal data, the GDPR's 2,000-plus provisions are widely regarded as complex, ambiguous, and inconsistently enforced. Legal experts argue that full compliance is nearly impossible, leaving multinational firms in a permanent state of legal exposure. This ambiguity grants European regulators broad discretion to pursue high-value cases selectively. As a result, U.S. tech companies operate under what critics describe as a constant compliance trap, a system that ensures ongoing vulnerability and recurring penalties. Analysts say these developments point toward a larger strategic objective, encapsulated in Europe's policy drive for digital sovereignty. Though framed as an effort to enhance independence and protect European consumers, the initiative increasingly appears to be aimed at reducing reliance on U.S. technology and redirecting economic power toward homegrown digital industries. Analysts say Europe's push for digital sovereignty has taken on a more tangible form, what some describe as the construction of a digital wall around its economy. The underlying goal, they argue, is not merely to regulate but to shield European tech firms from competition with U.S. giants. By imposing heavy fines and increasingly complex compliance demands, European policymakers appear to be carving out a protected market where local startups, often supported by public funds, can grow without facing direct pressure from Silicon Valley's dominant players. Rather than out-innovating their American rivals, critics contend that European regulators are reshaping the rules to make competition prohibitively expensive for outsiders. These fines are not isolated enforcement actions, but building blocks of a broader protectionist framework, aimed at deterring U.S. firms through legal and financial strain. The effect, they warn, is to slow American innovation and distort global competition under the guise of regulation. Adding to the controversy is what industry observers call the revolving door, a recurring pattern in which top EU officials who design and enforce these regulations later transition into lucrative roles at law firms and consultancies representing the same companies they once prosecuted. The movement of policymakers between public and private sectors has raised concerns about conflicts of interest and blurred lines between regulation and profit. Beyond the immediate financial impact, these policies are sending shockwaves through global supply chains. Each time the EU mandates changes, such as requiring Apple to adopt a universal USB-C port or enforcing region-specific software rules, manufacturers are forced to redesign products and packaging exclusively for the European market. These adjustments ripple across production hubs, causing delays, higher costs, and logistical disruptions that ultimately reach consumers worldwide. The outcome is a more fragile global tech ecosystem, where a single policy decision in Brussels can delay product launches in Tokyo or disrupt supply in New York. Meanwhile, as the US and Europe remain locked in this regulatory conflict, a third player is quietly capitalizing on the chaos: Asia. Companies such as Alibaba, TikTok, and Samsung are expanding rapidly while facing far fewer regulatory hurdles in Europe. Unlike their American counterparts, they are free to focus on innovation and global growth, channeling resources into research, product development, and market expansion rather than legal defense. This imbalance is gradually enabling Asian firms to capture market share across Europe, emerging economies, and beyond, while Western competitors remain entangled in litigation and compliance costs. Analysts describe this as a strategic miscalculation on Europe's part. By weakening U.S. tech companies, the EU may inadvertently be undermining the West's collective competitiveness, allowing Asian corporations to consolidate their influence in the global digital economy. Zooming out, this conflict represents a deeper structural shift in the world's technological order. For decades, the internet functioned as a borderless global network, where users could access the same platforms and services regardless of geography. That ideal is now fracturing. The U.S. EU tech divide, alongside Asia's independent digital ecosystems, is accelerating the rise of what experts call the splinternet, a fragmented digital landscape governed by competing regional standards and policies. Under this new reality, the technology available to consumers, and even how online business operates, will increasingly depend on location. The Digital Markets Act and GDPR define Europe's sphere, while U.S. trade policies and Asia's state-driven tech models shape theirs. The once unified web is dissolving into distinct, often incompatible digital blocks. Critics argue that Europe's pursuit of autonomy may come at the cost of global relevance. By focusing on penalizing American firms rather than fostering breakthrough innovation, the EU risks alienating its strongest technological ally while diverting the West's attention from the real competitive challenge: Asia's rapid rise. What began as an effort to assert independence now risks fragmenting the Western alliance and weakening its position in the digital age. Instead of building a European alternative capable of rivaling global leaders, Europe's regulatory crusade may be clearing the path for Asian dominance in the 21st century technology landscape. The so-called €13 billion betrayal is not just about financial penalties. It symbolizes a pivotal transfer of momentum. In attempting to protect its digital sovereignty, Europe may have inadvertently handed the future of innovation and global tech leadership to its competitors.